like this. Okay. Okay. So the MBT Book Club, we're on chapter 11 today. And our intention is just to come together and hold space for one another as we explore this great material and yeah, really just encourage and support each other. So why don't we go around and do a sharing circle and see what everybody thought. Suzanne, you want to start?
Okay, I did. I read most of the chapter. I didn't read all of the aside. It's still, I don't know. I got lost in the aside, and like last week, I just decided I believe in free will, and we have it. I don't have to understand all of the foundation of why that's true in order for me to progress forward.
Yeah. Here with you, sister.
I was going to say the same thing, Suzanne. Similar to that.
Yeah.
I didn't reread it. I did read it last week, and I thought, yeah, we'll just let it happen, whatever happens. And this was a very hard chapter for me to read, for whatever reason.
Yeah.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah, I got really lost in his, well, of course we must have free will, and this is why. And it's like, yeah, I don't get all that bit. It's okay.
But you know what was interesting? Throughout the whole week, something would happen, an experience would happen, and I would somehow refer to this chapter.
Oh,
So it was like learning, growing. I don't remember exactly what, but I remember reading, free will and things like that, and I thought, something happened. Because we all have a choice here, and so I remember someone complaining about something. I said, you have the choice to complain or choice to love.
that's what it comes down to.
That's what it comes down to.
Yeah. Gratitude or fear.
Yeah.
Yeah, what I was able to extract from this side was he broke it down into three main areas of free will. And then at the end of the side, he summarized the three areas that he broke down in basically one paragraph. It was pretty interesting to see because I do have a strong background in philosophy. And for him, he was able to really bridge between 3 or 4 disciplines in this aside. So this was actually a very, very important aside in from my perspective in terms of how he has been able to, and I think he summarized it in one sentence, and hopefully we'll be able to go through the aside, is that we don't need to bridge ourselves between NPMR and PMR. We are the bridge. And because we're living in this consciousness with this free will, with this psi consciousness, just by being, we are essentially proof between all of the different disciplines that there is one theory. And he said it somewhere around in the middle of the aside, that this is the purpose of the book. So essentially what this aside meant for me was that this is his theory right here. And from this aside, it allows me to understand where his trajectory is going and where the trajectory came from, and the purpose of why he's talking about my big theory, or my big toe, or the theory of everything. So it was a really interesting read. And Danny, I still stuck to my square square paragraphs because I don't know, man. Like this guy is absolutely brilliant. Because one of the things that I studied was with my philosophy was finance, because I understood this balance. But I said that there was always a bridge between disciplines. And one of my mentors, Charlie Munger, he's always indicated that there has to be a unified explanation across all these different secular components. And this is, I believe, Thomas is onto something, so he's definitely onto the unified theory here. So I thought the aside was pretty intense. It was an intense read, and I liked how he talked about, okay, get up, start hopping around on one foot, and then I was like, okay, I got up and started hopping around on one foot, and saying, it was pretty cool, like where he could have just timed it. He's like, okay, get up. I know that a couple of people are head bobbing and people are falling asleep, and I was like, yeah. Honestly, but yeah, he's a character. So that's how I felt of it. So,
cool.
Yeah, I read it throughout the week for sure.
So yeah, it was a tough read for me. I don't know. It was hard for me to stay focused on it. My mind kept wandering. I was trying to read it at the beach yesterday. We were at the beach, which would have been a perfect opportunity, but my mind kept just like drifting off and hearing music in the distance, and it was just not. It was tough for me. Luckily, we've been through it before, Daniel, and so I've got highlights from last time
Ah.
where I seemed to be able to pay attention last time because I've got a bit highlighted. So I'm just gonna stick with that because I didn't end up reading it. So I'll just go over the notes from last time.
So just to speak to Bobby's point, I think one of the great things about this book is that there are so many different things to not catch them, but for people to grab onto.
Mm-hmm.
And so some people are really into the scientific part and some people are not, but there's something in here for everyone. And I think that's one of the things I really like about the book. It's not just well, you have to catch this point. If you don't catch this, then it's all over with. There's just so many.
Now you'll get it down. You'll get it out.
Yeah.
Yeah, he definitely does that. He goes, go back to book one of this one or chapter 7, and he creates that. What I like in education is that ability to sew things up. He sews the quilt up, so to speak, right? From all these chapters, making it synchronize each other. So, that's the purpose of learning, is being able to take all this information and to put it together in some format. And he actually even talks about that in terms of your individuated consciousness and how your existence. Yeah, it's actually a pretty crazy read. So
let's dive in.
Let's do it.
Do it.
Okay. So, what do we have on the first page there? I like the second.
You're cutting in and out, Vanessa.
In the middle there, where he says,
Vanessa, I think we've lost you.
Yeah.
Okay. That's better?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, no, maybe not.
No, you're
Okay,
fine, but
yeah,
So
but you can hear
we
us?
can hear
We
you.
can hear you, but you're cutting in and out. Your video is cutting in and out.
Okay, it might just take a minute. We did connect now to the right network, so. Okay, but you can hear us fine, right?
Yeah.
Mhm.
Okay, cool. Okay, so yeah, the second paragraph on the first page there, I like the part where, second sentence, he says, well, just that whole paragraph, we have established that Om has feelings. However, without fear, ego, and delusion, Om's feelings are not at all like ours. On the other hand, if we replace our fear and ego with love, humility, and compassion, we begin to look and act like distant relatives of Om, chips from the old Om block, sharing a single continuous awareness with the source of all consciousness. I really like that because I feel like that's something to strive for, is to share that single continuous awareness with source. We often hear it to become one with everything. And that's kind of his language for saying one with everything, is that single continuous awareness with the source of all consciousness.
Mm-hmm.
And it actually, there is a way to become that. It's not that you have to spend years and years meditating. It's just to get rid of the fear and the ego and replace it with love, humility, and compassion, right? And then we always have, and it always comes back to the choice. I remember, what was it, yesterday? We had such a beautiful day at the beach with the kids, and then right at the end, Dee and I got into a little bit of a disagreement. Oh, because I wanted to stay longer. That's right. And the sun went down already. I'm like, let's just stay and hang out.
The sun, Susan. It was dark. Like,
it's not dark.
Here it's 12:30. Like literally, the sun was like setting behind the mountains, and then all of a sudden you just feel mosquitoes, and I hate mosquitoes.
It was not that dark. The sun did go down, but it wasn't dark.
Yeah, we're at Bunsen Lake, okay, and so and so it's like 7:05, and one of the things that we're practicing right now is just understanding our internal mapping. And so last week we said, okay, what are some stresses? And one of those stresses is I have a thesis and dissertation that I'm doing, right? So I'm trying to balance between family and getting this done. We spent 6-7 hours at the beach. Okay, it's time to go home. And Vanessa wanted to stay, right?
But the thing is, he's like, baby, let's go. And I was like, no, let's just hang out. It's all good. He's like, no, baby, let's go. And then finally, after him saying, let's go, after like 10 minutes out, he's like, baby, I have to go home and study. And I was like, oh, well, why didn't you just tell me that in the first place? And I would have been, yeah, let's go. He's like, well, you should know. You know what my stresses are. I'm like, oh my God, woman.
Those are signed contracts. Those are things I assume you should know.
Yeah. Right.
But you don't
anyway,
know.
the point of that aside was that as we were walking back to the car, I could feel myself. I had this voice going, just love. And then my ego was like, no, I don't want you right now. It was that choice, though. But I chose the ego. Like, I consciously chose the ego because I didn't feel like choosing love at the time.
Do you think choosing the ego is so much easier than choosing the love part of it?
It is, because it screams so loud. Where the love part is like that little nudge in the back. You're like, I'll just do it. And then the ego's like, no.
What about me? What about me?
Protect yourself. You don't need to love.
That comes later.
Yeah. Well, anyway.
Good observation.
Yeah. So let's see. Anything else stand out on the first page?
That last paragraph, let me see the second sentence and all the way down to the end. Our nervous system sends certain types of and patterns of signals utilizing neurons, synapses, nerves, and the like, representing the collected sensory data to the brain, which interprets these patterns and signals encoded sensory data to create the perceived physical reality within the context of past experiences. The non-physical mind receives the PMR reality experience from the brain's experience limited interpretation of the signals. The mind then applies its unique knowledge and quality to produce a response that expresses its intent in terms of internal and external actions. So with that, we all react to things differently because of all the past experiences that we've had.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So everyone's different. Everyone reacts differently. Everyone has receives the same input, but everyone has a different output.
Exactly.
And that was pretty cool. I was watching I was been watching a series called One Big Rock that Will Smith hosted. I think it was 10 or 11 sessions or episodes. And he talks about, it's really cool. And he talks about the earth and how it's created and how living things in this earth and how humans are changing it, but it's all our thoughts and feelings that's created who we are, and it's the planet that's created who we are, and it's sort of like the fractal that Tom talks about.
Yeah.
Right. And then he talks about, the last episode, they talk about what about aliens out there? And like, Earth has created who we are, and that's why we humans are able to have this free will. But what about other creatures out there in the universe? Maybe they're not as intelligent as us, or maybe they are intelligent. We don't know, but it's the environment that creates who we are. And they said that if we send humans to Mars, they're going to be called instantly Martians now because the environment has changed them, or is going to change them to act differently. And it was a really cool episode. And then I was thinking of this chapter when I was watching the episodes. It was really neat.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's cool when you can relate it back to right?
Yeah.
Immediately when I read that paragraph, Danny, I was picturing the Matrix, the first Matrix, when at the end when he found out like everything's binary code, and he's like, and I don't know, that's what was just coming up for me when I was reading them, like, where there has to be some type of medium between the non-physical matter reality and the physical matter reality, and that's where we are in this kind of virtual reality in between both. That's how I was interpreting it, at least. So yeah. I like that as well. I wanted to be a doctor, but I just don't like blood. So that's why I did.
You have to be a different kind of doctor then.
Exactly.
I don't want to be put together bones and like hips and my brain surgery. I'm like, no way.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. It reminds me a little bit of the last time I saw Tom, there was a question about, because every once in a while he'll talk about other realities that he's been to just a little bit. And it's like, well, then how come when we come back, when we reincarnate, we don't just go to one that's better? Like, why are we here in this one? Why aren't we in one that's, that's more kinder and gentler? And it was, his answer was, I was a little surprised by it, because what he was saying is, frankly, this is one of the more kinder, gentler realities. And you think about everything that's going on and how we're making a lot of bad decisions as a collective related to the environment and other species and stuff. And it's like, wow, how bad is it out there if this is one of the kinder, gentler places?
Mm-hmm.
There was I watched it, and one of the few episodes I watched the series Lost, but I also watched the series what was it called? Oh my gosh, where there was two different realities, and they had this guy named Walter and Walternate. Like his name was Walter in one reality, where he was this like doctor, and like he was he came out of an asylum, and then in Walternate in the other reality was like the leader of the world. And so it just reminded me of kind of that series. I forget what it's called. It is about pseudoscience and stuff like that, and stuff that's on. It's called Fringe. That's the show.
Fringe. Okay.
Fringe. I've seen. Boy, it's been a long time. Yeah, I've seen that one.
Yeah, so I lapped that up, but yeah, definitely when you're looking at different realities, and when he's talking about NPMR subset N, then you can definitely infer that there should be either worse or not. But it's interesting to hear him say that this is the better one, right?
Mm-hmm.
I was reading a book, I can't remember what it was recently, and it said, hey, if you look back over the course of time, we really have evolved in this. We're like from 500 years ago, the world is a much better place than what it used to be. And Tom's always talking about that, about how mean-spirited life was, and life was cheap, and how we've really progressed. And when you look back at how things have changed, it's like, yeah, we've come a long ways.
Mm-hmm.
It's easy to get pessimistic about it because we still have so much farther to go, but we have progressed as a species.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we absolutely have.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Making progress, for sure. And then if you look at just your own personal life too, I mean, you can probably notice that you've progressed too, and you've changed. It's funny, I'm in the middle of editing a documentary that I'm making with Tom when he was here in Vancouver last year. And so I get to like see and hear all the conversations again. And one conversation he was saying is that most people, it takes them about 30 to 40 years to get to the same level of consciousness that they were at last time they left. So it's probably around like 30 or 40 that you're up at the same, because you have to make all those choices again to make sure that you actually earn that level of consciousness. You didn't just fluke out last time. So then it takes you about 30, 40 years. And then he's like, and most people, they'll grow a little bit, like a little glimmer, but it takes so many lifetimes to make a huge difference. So as long as we can see progress in our own life. But the thing is, once we know our purpose for existence, we can grow up so much faster because now we have a rule book, so to speak. So
We're more focused.
How many people have no idea though what that purpose is? Because it seems like a large percentage of people just have no.
I read some say I think it's 80% of the people have no idea what their purpose is.
Yeah, and even those, and so that's the majority, right? And even so, if you're walking through this world blindly and you don't know what your purpose is, you will make progress. It'll just be very tiny bit. That's why it takes so many lifetimes. But like I'm saying, but once you know what it is, you can grow up so much faster. Yeah.
I don't know. I want the cliff notes or something next time, so it doesn't take 30 or 40 years to get back to the point where I'm really starting.
Then I think you have to experience it. That's the thing.
Yeah, you can't intellectualize.
I'm sure he explains that somewhere why it has to be, but
Actually, I think I may have found your answer down
The second page?
on the second page.
What's the answer, baby?
I don't know if it's the answer, but down at the bottom it says unplanned interaction with others and with our outside and inside environments create novel opportunities to exercise our intent by making choices that reflect our inner quality. Clearly, personal growth requires us to use our limited awareness to improve our understanding of what is important and to use our free will to improve the quality of our choices.
There you go.
Growing up and decreasing the entropy of our consciousness obviously requires far more than simply acquiring, storing, and processing knowledge. Being conscious, we have the innate ability to modify ourselves.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
where is that? That's on the second page.
Yeah, the very last paragraph, the
So-
second part of the last paragraph.
It's right in the middle of the last paragraph,
Okay.
unplanned. And so, you know, when we put it in context to what we were just talking about how we need to come back, and what Vanessa has just said, 30, 40 years of interactions, you know, that could be possibly an insight into what we are doing, right? Because we do come back, if we are coming back, we do come back with this limited awareness to improve our understanding.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we do. Yeah, I know. It's funny. We grow up in one lifetime and then we come back and it's like the slate gets erased and then we have to start all over again. Not having any idea what this is and why we're here, and then we struggle our way, but eventually, and that's why I think oftentimes it takes people hitting like rock bottom for them to then get this like big awakening.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I don't want to hit rock bottom.
I've hit it a few times. It's not as bad as it seems.
It's our perception of it, though, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's our interpretation.
Exactly.
Okay, anything else on that page?
Yes.
Yeah, I do from last time.
Nope.
How about the next page, 161? This stuff.
Yeah, I do. But so.
Is the whole thing,
No,
page highlighted?
it was continuation from what I just read, but it really, the context of I like how he starts to talk about though the intellect can occasionally act as a catalytic agent for personal growth, an isolated catalyst cannot induce a reaction to take place. One needs the proper reactants residing within a supportive environment, what you were mentioning earlier, right, Danny?
Mm-hmm.
Before the nudge of a catalyst can move the process forward. This is a particularly disturbing fact for those who live out of their heads by controlling and guiding their every thoughts and actions directly with their intellect. Their need to appear rational in the little picture severely restricts their ability to be rational in the big picture, or even realize that a big picture exists.
Mm-hmm.
So I like how talks about the intellect and how it really limits you in terms of that. And again, he's setting this up in terms of talking about left brain individuals, scientists, engineers, people that are, I need a logical deductive reasoning, A to B equals C. And it talks about how he's actually setting it up to say, okay, let's have this aside. And this is where I think he's starting to, because it's a little different to kind of change your thinking in terms of free will and how he's talking about free will and how free will is just, well, he gives the example of the chicken and the egg. He goes, well, which one comes first? And he goes, they both come first.
Mm-hmm.
They're both together.
You can't have one without the other.
Right.
And so yeah. I don't know.
I remember him saying that, answering that, says neither. They both evolved.
Right.
Yeah.
Mm.
It's when coaching clients, it's interesting how how fear you know tricks them, because there's a lot of irrational thoughts they come up with or solutions, but the fear makes it seem rational. But they don't they individually don't see that. People outside of their circle will see that and say that's not right, or that's stupid, or whatever it is. But
Mm-hmm.
it the fear convinced them to do the stuff that doesn't seem right, and to them it's okay, because now the fear has sort of influenced them that, yeah, go do it, it's okay, it's the right thing, when it really isn't the right thing.
Mm-hmm.
It's always easier to see what's wrong with somebody else than yourself.
Well, it's because they're not aware of it too, right?
You don't want to be aware of that. Yeah, the fear is blinding you to your own issues,
Exactly.
but
But until you actually deal with it, then you realize that wasn't so smart. But once you realize it, then you have your free will, your choices to change it.
yeah.
Mm-hmm. As Tom would say, the fear shrinks your decision space, right? You only can see like one solution. When if you didn't have that fear, you could see so many.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Yeah.
It gives you the safer the safer choice to take up on, but it might not be the best choice.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I really like on this page, what is it? I guess it's 1, 2, 3, 4. So it's the fourth paragraph, the end there. The paragraph starts fulfilling our individual purpose for existing, decreasing our overall individuated system entropy, improving spiritual content, or evolving the quality of our consciousness are more fundamental, crucial, and necessary components of our total evolution than biological evolution. Biological evolution merely provides the stage, props, and setting for facilitating consciousness evolution. Consciousness evolution is the main act, yet we spend lifetimes dedicated to nothing more than rearranging the stage props. Yeah, it's I love that because it helps me to understand what's really important. What's not important is what clothes I have in my closet or even what kind of career I have, or these things that seem to be so obviously mandatory and crucially important are not that important. What's important are the choices that I'm making in my everyday life. Like even those choices as simple as yesterday, coming home from the beach, choose love or choose fear. What are you going to choose? I chose fear. So I'm now increasing my entropy. It's always a choice. So just to pay attention to the details, which is funny because I've often said, don't sweat the small stuff. And he's like, always sweat the details. But, it is those little choices in everyday life that are crucially important. That's why we're
Mm-hmm.
here to make choices. It doesn't matter what form our life takes. What matters is choices that we make. Although the form that our life takes, it will reflect the choices that we make, right?
Right.
If we end up having, but I think that's more or less in terms of the people that are in your life. And if you have, if you're surrounded by happy people, happy family, good friends, and that reflects the quality of who you are, not necessarily the amount of things that you have in your life.
Mm-hmm.
I don't um I understand what you're saying, but I think sometimes the there are people that you can choose to have in your life, and then there are other people that are more, I guess they're not required, but there's like family can be family. I guess it feels for me that family is sort of the interactions I have that really help me, because sometimes it feels very difficult.
I agree.
And when I look at them, it doesn't feel like they're a reflection of my growth. It's the cause of my growth.
Right. I hear what you're saying. Yeah. And I would definitely agree with that too, in terms of parents and extended family, where I think the reflection is more accurate in terms of the where I'm at in my quality of consciousness is my immediate family. So my kids, my husband,
Mhm.
right? That's a reflection of me. If I have, happy, positive kids who are loving and kind, that's definitely a reflection of my parenting. Yeah. What are you look thoughtful, Suzanne?
Well, my kids are grown now. They're in their 30s. And I mean, I didn't find Tom till I was much older. So the reflections I see from my kids are very different. It's so I guess the generation I have to have more of a direct influence on now are my grandkids.
Right.
And it's not that I've washed my hands of my kids. It's just I look at that now and think, well, there's some lost opportunities that I can't really fix. All I can do is move forward, but
you probably didn't see these opportunities until you met Tom, when you learned and grew.
right. I did, like everybody, the best I could at the time, but I didn't have, my picture was very small at that time, and I didn't have an understanding of what my purpose was until much later.
You only knew what you knew, and you knew what the best of your knowledge to raise your kids.
Right, and sometimes it feels like it wasn't very good.
But you didn't know that.
No.
Right. So you did a good job.
Yeah, and I echo that, Danny. In terms of knowing now and choosing not to, it would be worse off. Knowing that you know now and choosing not to with your grandkids that would be the demise.
That's powerful there. Yeah.
Like knowing what happens to animals in the slaughterhouse and then still choosing to eat them.
You guys, I'm a vegetarian now, and I have been since Monday. Buddha bowls, Buddha bowls, Buddha bowls.
Buddha bowl. Oh gosh, I have a friend who did a Buddha bowl, and look, I couldn't believe all the food that was on the table.
Danny, my stomach is no longer distended because of all the food that I'm eating.
Yeah, but no, I get it, Suzanne, what you're saying, and yeah, I can relate to that as well. What I love with your situation is now you're right. You have the opportunity with your grandkids to directly influence them with the wisdom that you've gained over the years. So you do.
Is that why we spoil our grandkids?
I don't know. I found grandkids are very different from kids because of
You can give them back.
well, no, I have a bunch of them that live with me, so there was no giving them back. But it's just
they live with you.
4 of them.
Oh wow!
I've got 6 grandkids, and yeah.
Wow.
So maybe that's the deal I made before I came here. That okay, you didn't do it this generation, so now you.
You're helping them become a higher conscious being now.
Yeah, I'm trying.
More entropy.
Sometimes I feel like I've got so much work on myself. How could I possibly help anybody else?
But once you learn about it, you can teach them.
Yeah.
You can guide them. Sorry.
Yeah.
This may help. In terms of the last paragraph, it says, the evolution of our physical system, people, critters, plants, planet, blah, 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 plays out the choices and random events that are constrained to evolve within the limited possibilities of the space-time rule set. Physical evolution drama moves forward as a subset of big-picture conscious evolution, provides the setting for our virtual reality trainer and the context and the rules for our interactions. Those interactions lead us to choices, and choices provide us with the opportunities for self-improvement. Our physical reality, our perceptual experience, and the physical evolution of our species and the universe is an extremely small part of a much bigger evolutionary drama. And so, oftentimes I, think back and I'm saying, just take it easy on myself. And this lends that credibility to that, saying, what's happening to me is just really a smaller subset of what's happening out in this big evolutionary drama that's unfolding with everybody on this planet. So it could help just to make sure that you're taking it easy on yourself, sis. You know,
Little steps.
little steps. I think it was in What About Bob when he says baby steps. You guys remember the movie What About Bob? No. Anyways, Bill
No.
Murray.
Yeah, where he dies.
Oh,
Oh,
he was like a hypochondriac. He couldn't like touch anything, and he's like little steps to the door, little steps, and then he finally was able to walk through the door. Anyways,
I think it's finding that balance, finding enough pressure to improve, yet still not beating yourself up too much over not improving as much as you want.
mm-hmm.
So it's kind of a balance on that, at least for me.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's definitely a balance for sure, and not getting stuck in the analytical brain, overanalyzing things, thinking too much. That's what Tom told me. He's like, so the best thing, you think too much, you analyze things too much. Just be, you know. Yeah, just live your life and have fun.
but is, may I add something more on the next page?
Go for it.
Okay, so at the bottom, and this is what, in terms of what my post-grad studies, one of my majors is on innovation. Innovation talks about how companies are on the frontier on the S-curve. The S-curve is on the unbound, unknown elements in business. And it says right at the bottom, and this is how it relates to us and our personal growth. Significant choices are mostly made at beyond the uncertain edge of our certain knowledge. Our choices as expressions of our dynamic consciousness quality are constantly groping at the vague periphery of our personal limitations. In more technical terms, making a choice and learning from it is analogous to sampling a noisy signal. Individual measurements, executions of intent are uncertain. That is why bootstrapping our consciousness quality is a slow, tentative process that yields best to small, steady pressures that are generally applied in the right direction. Personal growth often develops slowly and hesitantly from the seeds of our experience that are planted by our intuition at the ragged, noisy outer edge of our understanding and awareness. Yeah, that's where when I was younger, I always said, look, I've got to continually push myself at my upper end of my comfort zone. And I would create this box, and I'd put a little line at the top of the box and said, if I'm performing in anything that I'm doing at the upper end of this box, I'm pushing myself forward in life.
Yeah.
Not resting on my laurels, but moving myself in my upper end of my comfort zone. And when I read that, I was like, well done, Tom. You're able to explain something that I oversimplified.
Mm-hmm. I love that analogy because you're at the edge, you're able to sort of push it and sort of stretch it and make it even bigger.
Yeah.
Love it.
It was pretty powerful read, this whole side thing. Anyways, I've been taking much time.
No. I like that, Daniel, too, how you're saying because you're at the edge, you're able to push it and stretch it even further. Because that gives me a visual of, yeah, you're right at the edge. The only way you can make something bigger is by being at the edge, by pushing the boundaries, right?
Yep. And you don't really have to step out of your comfort zone so much, but you just keep pushing it.
Yeah.
It enlarges it. Yeah.
And that's true what you said, is because it's when people, sorry, how do I say this properly? One of my mentors has always said that in business, you need to stay within your areas of competency. And when you stay within your areas of competency, your growth will really occur when you master your areas of competency and stretch outside the competency. But if anyone has stretched ever too far, you've like ripped something, right? So it's like knowing that limitation and stretching, and by stretching outside your area of competency, you actually increase your circles of competency. Mm-hmm. And then if you have all these circles of competencies in terms of any disciplines and business and areas of understanding, ideally those circles of competency will eventually touch. And then you've arrived at an area where, you know, you do have a strong understanding of certain things.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Whereas with me, what happens is I get into one competency and then I'm like, oh yeah, cool. And then I get bored. Then I go to another one and then I just want to learn something different. I'm always like bouncing all over the place. But I like that. I don't want to become what jack of all trades, master of none. I'd like to really be able to master, like, for example, like this is a theory, you know, I'd like to be able to have a thorough, in-depth understanding of this theory before I go and like really dive into another theory. But I like to be aware of other theories and different models that are available. Yeah.
I do some business consulting as well, and what I love is I use my supply chain background to push other people's perception and their knowledge in like accounting, and I use some supply chain analogies and say, yeah, as long as they're willing, I'll ask some questions in my supply chain realm, not knowledge, and so get them to look at things from a different angle, and they come up with different ideas from that.
Yeah,
cool.
And you know, with supply chain, you've obviously understood Kaizen and total quality management, and you know, and ISO 9000. But those came from areas where you're saying we've identified a deficiency and we need to then increase our competency.
Right.
Those things absolutely have a lot of cross-lateral representation in a lot of things. So if
in
you're
all departments,
it's crazy where like you can't think of yourself as just a separate unit, and then when you apply that same element here in the theories that we're learning is that we're all individuated units of consciousness that are moving a collective arm forward in its overall consciousness. And again, as you can see, that synergy of how it relates.
Yeah, to me, they're just concepts, and these concepts can be applied to different other areas. Fractals, right? We're just fractals. That's all it is.
I love the fractals when he
I know.
Fractals. Talking about, he asked us, he goes, what about these clams? What about a pig? Just because we're moving quicker through our evolution of consciousness, clams have actually evolved over time.
Just at a slower pace.
Slower pace, right? So it's crazy, right?
So imagine what computers can do to help us grow in the future.
And then going back to what Suzanne was saying in terms of like how much have we evolved over the last 400, 500 years, where we're quickly, I think the term is we're increasing at an increasing rate now at this point, where if you look at an XY curve, it's exponential graph. It's now like this.
Yeah.
It's turned up on that exponential graph. It's starting
hockey
to
stick
go down.
now.
Yeah. And you know, so.
Yeah.
I was watching a TED Talks yesterday and how they could map the whole universe in 40 years.
Wow.
I was like, wow, like how many billions of stars are there, or trillions of stars? They're going to be able to map this out in 40 years.
Craziness.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
So you guys want to know a little interesting thing? I don't know if you know this, babe, but the first book that I ever read was this huge book, and the title was The Universe. And so I find it comical now that was the first book that I read when I came to Canada as an immigrant. And I loved about stuff about that, but that's where I just find it comical, where I'm now starting at 40 years of my evolution. I'm back, and I'm learning about all of these things about the universe, about consciousness, and it's just, I just get a chuckle sometimes when I'm reading stuff. I'm like, oh my gosh, no doubt I would be here right now for sure. I wouldn't be anywhere otherwise, right?
You got it.
Okay, back to the book, because we have been on 45 minutes and we're only on like page 4. So page, what are we on, 163? Okay, so this is, now we're into the aside. So 164. I had just like really at the very bottom, the last sentence, where he says, or the last paragraph, we humans have employed interactive virtual reality training devices such as flight simulators for pilots for many years. Experience is the key to learning. Whether that experience is actual or virtual is irrelevant. Learning is the key to consciousness evolution. Experience, operational memory, and interpretive processing, perception, data collection, free will choice, and the ability to learn, information processing, developing results and conclusions, and grow, self-modification, relative to profitability goals, are fundamental attributes of successfully evolving consciousness. Yeah, I like that. And just how he's emphasizing that experience is the key to learning, and it doesn't matter if that experience comes from a virtual reality or if that experience comes from something in your immediate life, as long as you're learning. You know, I mean, you could even watch. Well, I mean, you could watch a movie or a documentary, and you could have a huge learning from that, and that could be more beneficial to you sitting in a classroom and learning from a teacher. It doesn't matter if it came from watching a screen or came from another human being, as long as there was learning there. Because think about how many people have changed their lives or their behaviors by watching a documentary, by becoming educated, such as, you know, becoming vegan because you see this documentary that informs
Vegetarian.
you.
Look at Suzanne. Look at Suzanne. Baby steps, baby. Baby steps.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but experience is the key to learning. How you gain that experience is irrelevant, as long as you have the experience that then prompts you to move forward and grow.
Mm-hmm.
Anything else on that page, 164? Have a 165.
Yeah, I have the one. I have this the paragraph that starts with free will, but
Yeah.
but more. I put a square bracket around it, but focusing on a couple of sentences inside, and one of the sentences that really resonated with me was, without free will, a profitable consciousness. Sorry, without free will, a profitable consciousness system is impossible. If you and your many sentient friends and acquaintances are conscious, consciousness must not only exist, but also support a complex interactive system of coherent experience. So let me interject there. He poses a question. He goes, do you think, he goes somewhere in the aside, he goes, are you aware of yourself? And if he goes, if you say yes, then you absolutely have a consciousness. And then, so let me go back to the sentence, and it goes, given that consciousness exists, it must be enabled by memory, information processing capability, intelligence, and the interactive sharing of data and free will choice, making in the service of a profitable evolution. So that whole paragraph itself was very powerful, but those really stood out in terms of understanding about profitable evolution and what is really about, you know, and what I try to do when I read in these really, really heavy detail is, how does this apply to the bigger picture, and why are we bringing this up? I believe Tom is bringing this up to understand our purpose as individuated units of consciousness and how it relates to the overall profitability of
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And then it goes right at the bottom of that, on the last sentence of the same paragraph. Such a system cannot evolve toward greater profitability without free will to make the required choices. Yeah, he starts to go off about free will in different areas.
Come in. Okay, so we'll move on to the next page, 166.
Are we on 166?
Yeah,
Yes.
As I was inferring back about the free will of the clam or the bumblebee, for some reason, Suzanne, I thought he was talking about a pig, but I was like, maybe I was craving some pork or something.
You're thinking of the Boodle Bowl.
But I like how he says, clams and bumblebees have many daily choices and decisions to make as well. And they live and die, grow, and evolve by the cumulative results of those choices as we do. And that was pretty crazy, because I'm like, okay, if I put myself in a bumblebee, and I'm like, do I go to this flower or do I not? And as simple as that decision from our intelligence seems, that could be a very hard decision for a bumblebee. because I don't know, maybe he's flying into a spider's nest. But when I tried to relate what he was trying to talk about here, it really kind of slowed my thinking down, and I'm saying, wow, this guy is a pretty smart person to really start to understand about different sentience and their consciousness. And then in the same paragraph, it goes, I suspect their individual deliberate actions are spread over a statistical range that represents the decision space of their species. One of my degrees is in finance. So when I understand statistical range, we're talking millions of years for these animals.
Mm-hmm.
Where it's just like, it's incredible to understand that. Again, like there's inclinations there of him putting together these multi-disciplines of education and saying, here's how they're all related together. I'm every time I read these chapters, it's just, I get blown away by what he's been able to do. It's just, yeah.
Let me ask you this question, Robert. Do you extrapolate what he's saying into different areas of your life or different?
Absolutely, Donnie.
That's what I do too. It's pretty neat. And you learn and grow from that too, right? You're learning.
Yeah, and I think that's why he's called the book The Big Theory of Everything, right? It's just like, wow, like, yeah. Incredible, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, he goes, and then the last sentence, he goes, for a given fundamental capacity, lower entropy supports a larger, more complex decision space. Higher capacity also supports the potentiality of lower entropy. So how I determine what he said from there is that because naturally, as humans have a ability for lower entropy because of our evolutionary process, and the higher capacity also supports the potentiality of our lower entropy. Those two sentences, I was starting to understand what he was talking about, how this physical matter reality gives us this higher capacity to support the potentiality of this lower entropy.
Right.
And because at the end of the aside, he talks about MPMR and the link between MPMR and PMR, where we are that intermediary. Mm-hmm. And so again, it just gives me a little insight into where he was kind of moving towards, not knowing until I read the end of the aside and I came back saying, wow, this was pretty powerful what he said there.
That's cool.
Vanessa, anything? the kids are up. I think they're hungry.
Oh, are they?
So I guess I'll continue to, as in the words of Vanessa, does anyone have anything else on 166?
Yeah, near the 2/3 of the way down, because most of us have little appreciation for the depth and breadth of our ignorance. You are necessary unaware of what you are unaware of. It's almost like you don't know what you don't know because you don't know.
Right. Going back to what we were talking about, Suzanne, right? Like, Suzanne, you're being so hard on yourself, but it's just like, you didn't know.
Exactly.
I remember when my father was sick, and my father passed away in 2010 with Alzheimer's and cancer due to the hardcore pharmaceuticals in his liver. But he had a sustained level of standard of living for about 12 years. I remember when I was playing professional soccer and I was like, should I come back or should I not? And I was already a 2-time world champion at the age of 22 as a professional soccer player. And I said, this is actually the decision space. What person has the opportunity to do what I've done and achieve what I've done at such a young age? Of course I need to go back. And so yeah, hopefully that, and it was absolutely the best decision I ever made in my life, to stop my life, go back, look after my dad. And but again, when we're talking about that, you are necessarily unaware of what you are unaware of.
Mm-hmm.
And so I would pray a lot, and I do pray a lot still. And one of the things I do ask for is just wisdom to make the decisions of what to do, right? And I remember, Danny, you talked about you were driving and you had that little inclination, like, okay, stay focused, and that car kind of swerved into your lane. I have sometimes those all the time where I'm like, I told you, I was like, I'm backing up, and it just stop, and then all of a sudden, boom, the car comes right behind you. It's just like, right. And then I think, like, wow, like, what if I didn't pray and and in the context of what we're learning is that what if I didn't consciously get connected to the bigger picture, get those kind of insights to say, hey, maybe I should listen to that little nudge that says, no, I should press the brake.
Right.
Powerful stuff when you really get deep into it. So.
And scientists would decide to say that's just a coincidence, just luck.
and he refutes that later on the aside.
He does.
He does.
Anything else in that chapter?
On the page, rather.
Yeah. Sorry.
I like it starts right at the bottom. The fact that transcending belief and expanding your awareness is difficult to accomplish is not a bad thing. In fact, it is a necessary feature of all successful consciousness systems. Makes me feel okay that it's like this is a difficult thing, right? And yeah, it's difficult. I think we go back to it. But you asked that question, Danny. Was like, well, can you tell the differences, the intellect, your ego versus your love space? And oftentimes when Vanessa and we're having friction, I hear the little nudge, Suzanne, that says, oh, just go hug her. When it, that ego is just like, hell no, you're in the right, stake your claim, stand your ground. and then there's that little right back here is like, just go give her a kiss.
All goes always, but what about me? What about me? What about what I need?
Danny, right? And then all of a sudden, all this noise.
So Robert, what do you normally choose?
You know what? And here's the weird thing. That, to answer your question, I choose to come from love as much as I can. And I know what it feels like. It's like this weird invisible barrier of me moving forward. But as soon as I go through it, it just, it's weird.
Relief. It's like relief, right?
Like more than relief. It's like the Indiana Jones in the Temple of Doom, where he was about to walk onto that path, but he couldn't see the path, where he had to blow like dust on it, where he took a step out and across the chasm, and there was an actual path there. You guys remember the movie?
Yep.
And the reason why you couldn't see the path is because of the sun was shining on it at a certain angle that looked like there was no path. But it was that fear of just going. I remember reading a book as a young kid. It was called Feel the Fear and Do It Anyways. And that's what always comes up to me. But you guys, it's hard sometimes when you really just are like, oh, no, I'm right about this. But we learned a framework about one of the 5 chairs. I don't know if Vanessa's expressed that to you, but one of the chairs is, it says, do you want to be right or do you want to have a relationship? And of course, I want to have the relationship.
Yeah, I think Vanessa shared the video or YouTube video.
Yeah, last week.
Yeah.
What about you guys? You guys do you fear? Like, do you feel it coming up, or that little nudge, like right back here? Sometimes it's somewhere around.
Yeah. On occasion, not probably enough, but.
Yeah, Danny asked us, which one do you choose? I was like, I tried to choose.
I think for me, it's still very intellectual. Like, well, I know what I should be doing. I know what the right decision is. And so it's not incorporated enough at the being level. Although there are times when I've caught myself and I look back and it's like, wow, I didn't think through that decision. I just made one, and it was obviously the right decision. So sometimes it's still a very intellectual process for me. But I'm trying to practice the fake it till you make it.
Looks like you're doing good to me, sis.
What
about you, Danny?
For me, it's I know what's best, but it's hard to do it sometimes. And then when you do it, it's like, that wasn't so bad after all.
Right? It's that relief. It's like, so here's an example. Like, Vanessa's on this side of the sofa. I'm on this side of the sofa. Okay, we're definitely disconnected, and it's just trying to make that, and it's just move forward. And that actual physical movement, Suzanne, of like getting up and like, it feels like there's like 300 pounds on my back and I'm squatting, right? But it's weird. As soon as you make that move, it just dissipates. And I think that's what Vanessa's always said, is that, love trumps the ego.
Hmm.
Right. So anyways, hey, babe.
Sorry, I had to make bagels for the kids. Okay, what page are we on?
We're on chapter 13.
You haven't moved very far.
166.
Still? That's where we left
Yeah.
off.
Yeah, we're
Yeah.
talking about
We're waiting for you, babe.
choices. Talking about choices.
Okay, cool.
We've made the choice to be quite slow.
We're processing.
Like a clam.
Little steps.
What did we have on that page?
We were talking about the
Sure.
clam or the bumblebee and their choices, and the evolutionary process is obviously over a larger statistical evolution than ours.
Did you guys look at this already?
No.
So in the middle there, where it starts, in case you are wondering, the capacity of the human consciousness is immense, yet we exercise only an infinitesimal fraction
Nice word, Thomas.
of that capacity. Our potential ranges far beyond your wildest dream. Unfortunately, the part of that potential we have intentionally actualized typically supports little more than the tedious soap opera we call real life. Yeah. That just reminds me anytime I am getting upset over something like, I can't believe she did that. I can't believe she was supposed to come to my party, but then she went and played tennis with the other friend. Oh my God. Like, if I do that, I'm like, okay, Vanessa, that's the soap opera. Don't be so fucking petty, you know? Yeah, because so much time can get consumed in these little dramas if I let them, if I choose to let them go that way. But again, remembering the big picture, what's really important helps to snap me out of that limited perspective. So I like that, the soap opera that we call real life. Because it really is. I mean, a lot of I guess maybe it's more so for women than it is for men. But
You guys aren't emotional, are you?
Social.
yeah, we're so.
So just looking at the difference between raising boys and girls are much more into caring about friends and what they think and all that stuff. The social is much more important to them.
Yeah, definitely. We're relational, right? Like women, we need to relate. Like we like to connect with our girlfriends and have that sisterhood. And so yeah, we can take things. I find that I sometimes have been taking things personally, and that's part of my growing opportunity, is not to take things personally. It's not a personal attack if somebody chooses not to call me back or something. That's just because their own experience and what's happening in their world has probably nothing to do with me. So.
Do you think females are more associated with feelings versus guys are more with thinking, the analytical side of things?
Yeah.
Yeah.
In a very general way, yes.
Yeah, I think so too.
They did a study, an interesting study, and they had all these suitcases outside of a minivan. And they said, and they basically said, okay, here's a sample size of women and sample size of men. And the men were able to get all of the suitcases into the back of the caravan in such a uniform manner, where the majority of the sample of women, they left one or two out, and they said, I'll just put it in the front seat, I'll just put it in the middle seat. But the task was to put it. So when you talk about logical, deductive order, where men come from the intellect and more reasoning, there was a study, I found a little comic. It was I should be quiet now.
But they've done a number of studies around things like that, and where they would give men like these 5 tasks to do in a certain time frame. They give men and women these tasks to do in a certain time frame, and the women would start multitasking. They'd start one, and then they'd go start another thing, and they'd do another thing. And the men were like, they'd start one, and they wouldn't do anything else till they finished it. And then they'd start the next one, and they wouldn't do anything else till they finished it. And the men were not able to accomplish all of the tasks because their multitasking abilities were different from
Guys
women.
can't multitask.
Yeah. So I mean, you can do those kind of studies all day long and to show the differences between men and women. And I think there's some, we have the potential to be different in those areas. But yeah, it's,
It always depends upon your sample size, though, right? So
Here you are with your statistical analysis.
maybe you're thinking too much about it.
where's my cup of tea? I got it. I think it says here, it's good to be the queen.
Okay, so 167.
I'm not sure we're going to make it through this chapter.
I don't
We
think
always skip through the aside too. Unless, okay, why don't we do that? Was there anything else in the aside that stood out?
Yeah, I do have sentences that really kind of resonate with me. I have one on 168. I don't know what that's in the big book.
418.
Okay, and it says right at the top paragraph, last sentence goes, free will and consciousness co-evolve as a mutually reinforcing aspect of the same system thing. Free will evolves as a natural and necessary attribute of living consciousness.
Yeah. The next sentence is good too.
Yeah.
Only consciousness systems that evolve a practical implementation of free will can continue to progress forward some measure of greater personal profitability.
Yeah. And then the sentence down in the third paragraph, he goes, look around. That scheme represents the fundamental nature of individual and collective sentient entities. That all sentient entities seem to reflect the fundamental properties and processes of evolving consciousness is an important data point to consider. I bit my tongue yesterday. It was bad. Like I chucked Noah up in the air in the lake, and his knee came up and hit me, and it was bad, like to the point where I thought we may have to go get stitches. So my tongue's a little swollen.
Wow.
I was bleeding profusely. Anyway.
But it's important when I've never heard Tom say this word, important data point to consider. All sentient entities seem to reflect that fundamental properties and processes of evolving consciousness is an important data point to consider. And so he's stating his argument to these left brain people, saying that this is an important point to consider in his theory of what's going on.
Mm-hmm.
And then at the bottom it goes, consciousness and free will go together like inhaling and exhaling. Consciousness and free will represent, what you were saying, Danny, a practical combination of attributes necessary for the balanced functioning of a real, as opposed to theoretical, evolving system.
Mm-hmm.
It's in the next paragraph. He talks about the chicken and the egg and which one comes first. And
yeah,
mm-hmm.
Pretty cool what he did. And then in terms of what he talked about the chicken and egg, he goes on the fourth paragraph down, the paragraph that starts with scientists and philosophers. It starts with the sentence, do you see the flawed logic that makes these questions appear deep instead of dumb? It is a similarly flawed logic that supports the concept of determinism by evoking a little picture causality that is devoid of an appreciation of a larger reality which is based upon a dynamically evolving consciousness. Determinism essentially is A, therefore B must equal C.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, anything else in that aside before we move on to the rest?
I have one on page 170. It goes, third paragraph down, last sentence. Logical conflicts and paradoxes appear to exist within the little picture view because of the erroneous assumptions of little picture science.
Yeah, and so I had further up on that. So where he says that, it's the third paragraph. It starts, our conceptual limitations are often generate logical contradictions. So mind matter, wave particle duality, the entangled pairs fall into the same causality confused basket. The big picture expresses the true nature of reality, while the little picture expresses the shared delusion of a group of individuated consciousnesses enrolled in the PMR Learning Lab. The conflicts and paradoxes you see are not real and do not exist in the big picture. Yeah, so to me, that's just always being reminded of the big picture of what's really important here. So anytime I'm feeling like overwhelmed by things that are happening in my personal life, just to snap out of it and then to remember what's really important here. And again, it's always just use love, to come from a place of big understanding, of compassion, of understanding it through other people's eyes. And that will give me this this ability to kind of dissolve all the frustration or angst or anger or disappointment that I'm going through in my little picture, as long as I can just remember in the moment the big picture, what's really important.
Mm-hmm. The last full paragraph, the last sentence, it is not that you have consciousness, but that you are consciousness.
Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah.
And then on page 171, Danny, right at the first paragraph goes, without free will, consciousness is not consciousness. It is merely purposeless process.
Mm-hmm.
And then the middle sentence, the concept of consciousness without free will creates a logical inconsistency.
Yeah. I had that highlight exactly the way you said it.
Then the second paragraph, bottom sentence on 171, a complex consciousness ecosystem designed by evolution to be simultaneously out of control, in balance, and in a continual state of redefining itself leaves omniscience theoretically impossible. He's like, boom, take that.
Yeah, I don't know if they like that.
I don't know, man. But he did say on the next page, he's like, okay, guys, get up, go stretch your legs. Let it marinate a little bit.
Yeah.
Okay, anything else? We got 15 minutes, so.
I've got square brackets, but I was just focusing on some sentences that really popped out, and I have one on page 175.
Yeah.
So last paragraph, above the Albert Einstein parentheses, the sentence goes, a better understanding of the bigger picture points out the theoretical and practical impossibility of perfect or complete knowledge within an evolving consciousness system. The highest fidelity model must contain randomness.
Mm-hmm.
And that randomness is what he's supporting about free will.
Right.
And he goes on, the next page talks about determinism.
Wait, well, okay, what page are we on now?
176.
He talks a lot about determinism.
Yeah, he does, yeah.
I think that's what the aside is this is his, he's like, he remember
He's trying to explain why determinism is not
Yeah, I
valid.
think he sums it up on page 176, the third paragraph down, just in the one sentence where he says, the illusion of determinism is the illusion that this rule set represents all reality and not merely the local calculation space, reality, or dimension of existence that we call PMR. So, yeah, I mean, and then the bottom, the very last sentence in that paragraph, the appearance of a deterministic causality is the result of a limited understanding extrapolating the restrictions of an imposed local structure upon all of existence. So again, it's just being stuck in the little picture that this is all there is.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, anything else?
Yeah, on 177 I have something.
Yeah.
Bottom paragraph, it goes, given the algorithmic digital nature of the space-time rule set, a little toe may or may not exist. However, a big toe that solves profound contemporary problems of philosophy, metaphysics, and physics, all at the same time and within one overarching theory, must exist because we are here and are as we are. And he basically says later on, he goes, the answers are actually within us. And he's made reference to that before in our physical system, he goes, the bacteria in our stomachs have no idea that there is sunlight hitting the skin, but does it really matter? Or, you know, something along that. I call it the Bojana chapter, where she really likes the petri dish example. Anyways.
So 178. I like the second paragraph, starting, science has the mission to pursue all knowledge, leading to a better, more profitable understanding of the natural world. And then a couple sentences down, to find truth, you must go wherever it leads. Belief-blinded, closed-minded individuals who travel the path of least resistance and derive their respectability from supporting the beliefs held in common by their peers choose the safety of the herd over the ability to discover big truth. Yeah, I just again, that's being fearful and being ignorant. If we choose to do that, just follow the herd because of fear of what other people outside of the herd might think of you. So even like looking at this kind of material, you know, this is somewhat on the fringe. I mean, it's becoming more and more in the mainstream. But you know, I remember posting on Facebook about a year ago. Who here thinks that we could possibly live in a virtual reality? You know, just putting it out there to see, like, get it, the feeler. And yeah, well, it was 50-50 only because I have a lot of MBT friends. But I think if one of my friends from high school were to post that, and a lot of them commented on, they're like, no way, that's impossible. We could never be living in a virtual reality. Because it's on the fringe. So to pursue that idea, you have to be somewhat of an individual and courageous enough to step outside of the herd, you know, to think of different possibilities.
I have a sentence on 178 that supports what Vanessa is saying rather, and it's the last sentence on the first paragraph about determinism or logical deduction, is that the difficulty is not that logical scientific solutions are impossible. The difficulty is that a self-limiting belief-based science inadvertently makes it impossible to comprehend the correct answer.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Are those birds coming from you, Suzanne?
Yeah, they're outside.
I love that. Beautiful. Okay, we got 10 minutes left.
I got one on 180, if no one has anything before.
No.
Yeah, I did have one before. On 178 at the very bottom, the very last paragraph, only a failed and desperate theory. Well, I actually had the I don't know, at the paragraph before that even, I had that started for some reason. So he says, it is a mistake for an entity within this vast reality fractal to believe its only tiny local reality subset of the greater consciousness ecosystem is the one, the only, the center, the pinnacle of creative expression. Individuals with little picture views can see nothing other than themselves, emerging from the possibilities of existence. Such a limited vision produces not only a misplaced determinism, but robs its owner of the knowledge he or she needs to actualize their personal potential. And then the next one, only a failed and desperate theory, cultural, social, theological, or scientific, will feel the necessity to deny the existence of the facts it cannot explain. The facts of science, consciousness, free will, paranormal events, and the human spirit are left lying about everywhere. Open your eyes, explore them for yourself. They are not secrets, nor are they difficult to find once your mind is open to the possibilities. So that's, to me, that's like the first step, is opening your mind to other possibilities, and not just viewing the world through the cultural or the lens that I've been accustomed to grow up with. But instead, yeah, like you guys were saying earlier, stepping outside of the comfort zone, stepping outside of the box, trying things on for size. Because that's the only way to expand my vision. Maybe you had something on 178?
I'm 180. So Danny, this is for you. I square bracketed the first paragraph, but I'll just read the sentence starting. You cannot build a physical or non-physical bridge between PMR and MPMR. The physical bridge cannot be solidly connected to MPMR, and the non-physical bridge cannot be solidly connected to PMR. You are the bridge, which is why you cannot build one exterior to yourself. Consciousness is personal. Really powerful paragraph that I actually square bracketed. So it was pretty cool.
Yeah.
And
I
then
like the next sentence, though, you are an individuated unit of consciousness hallucinating a physical reality, perceiving a virtual physical reality.
Mm-hmm.
yeah, and then
You are the connector between the non-physical and physical.
and then it supports what you're saying, Susan. Right at the bottom on 180 goes, determinism believes that you are a rule-based body hallucinating a consciousness with free will, when in fact you are consciousness and free will hallucinating a rule-based body.
Mm-hmm.
Talking about your virtual matter physical matter reality, and you're that it's a virtual reality. And then goes, you will understand that the determinist by definition must be unconscious, an apparent paradox that is easily verified by logical analysis, which is his aside previous to this.
Mm-hmm.
Really smart guy, man.
Yes. And during this chapter, I kept thinking, how do you think of all this?
That's what I was saying.
Right?
That's crazy.
I think he started in a higher place in this life than any of us
I
are ever.
totally agree.
Which occasionally I become curious about how is he so far ahead of everybody? Like, what experiences has his IUOC had over, the lifetimes in order for him to be where he's at now?
Mm-hmm.
Well, I think Vanessa said that he's inferred that he is the white coats in the lab, where we're in the petri dish. Is that right, baby? Is it no?
Yeah, like he talks about the lab staff, right? Yeah, so yeah, he's part of the lab staff.
Yeah.
Vanessa, remember when we were at our MBT experience in Tennessee? Someone had shown us,
Autobiography of a Yogi.
yes, and there's a picture of, I can't remember who it was, and we looked at Tom, and there's like, whoa.
Yeah. Not Sui Yuktesar, because he was Paramahansa, I think it was, right? Yeah.
There's so much resemblance there.
So when you're talking about innovative technology at Steve Jobs' funeral, he had a free copy of Diary of a Yoga for everybody.
Oh,
Yeah.
Diary.
But one of the things that I remember of Steve Jobs is he said that you have to imagine the world like a glob of Play-Doh, that when you push into the glob, that there's going to be a reaction. So there was a lot of his theory in terms of how he was able to come with all this technology that's linked to what Tom is writing about. It's pretty crazy. So, yeah. Anyways.
Okay, so we're done with the aside, and we're on the last 2 pages. Anything there, guys?
I square bracketed the last paragraph.
What about before that, though? Suzanne, did you have anything?
I think the only thing I've got highlighted in that is patience will always be a necessary virtue.
Yeah.
Yeah, I didn't have anything until the last paragraph.
Yeah.
Well, I had before that. I mean, it was already, he bolded it right on the page 182. The point is, the public message of My Big Toe is focused at developing the conceptual foundation upon which a more traditional future science will one day be based. Yeah. You see, I've not written My Big Toe to frustrate and torture left-brain techies with calculable generalities. The time for calculation is simply not arrived yet. So this is like the starting point. This is the foundation, right? And then science will be derived.
Right.
Which you're doing right now with the Kuzak team.
Yes, we definitely are.
A little foreshadow in his book.
Yeah. And then, yeah, so you guys all had the last paragraph?
Mm-hmm.
So the private message of My Big Toe is for you, dearest reader. Yes, just for you. The real power to effect significant positive change lies not with governments or professions, nor with science and the technology it spawns. The real power behind meaningful progress and growth at any level of aggregation or organization is the quality of the individual consciousness driving the action. Raising that quality can be accomplished only by the self-directed personal evolution of each individual. Clearly, the private message of My Big Toe is offered up for your personal use and benefit. Its potential value lies not in the words, nor in the idea. I can feel you making fun of me.
Oh, my love.
So the potential of it.
Okay, so its potential value lies not in the words nor in the ideas presented. The potential of its value is the possibility of positively influence the potential of your value, a potential that is profound and beyond estimation. Yeah. It's for us. This is what he wrote it for.
Yep.
Pretty cool stuff, man.
Yeah. Potential that is profound and beyond estimation. So we all have that potential within us, right? We all have that potential that is profound, each and every one of us, to actualize it. It's up to us to wake up and realize that we have this potential within.
And do something with it.
Mm-hmm.
And stop making stage props in our reality.
There you go.
I remember Tom at one of the immersives, Tom saying to me, like after a session, him saying, don't think of yourself or stop thinking of yourself as this limited being who's like doesn't have much influence or power. You got to stop thinking that way, because we all have such huge potential and power. It just comes down to owning it, right?
Yeah.
It's like, remember that Williams quote? It's something like, your greatest fear is not that you're inadequate, but your greatest fear is that you're adequate beyond all knowing. Yeah, we fear that power, because then it puts us in this place of responsibility. I go there sometimes too. I'm like, I just want to retire on a beach and, I'll be a beach bum and hang out. I don't want any responsibility. But yeah, it's getting away from that. That's playing small and actually owning your potential to play big and to create a major difference in the world.
Mm-hmm.
So this was great, you guys. I love our Sunday morning sessions. You guys are good with Sunday mornings?
Yeah, although I won't be able to make next week.
Oh, okay. Daniel, Sunday is good for you?
Sunday's good for me. Okay,
cool. All right. Well, thank you. Let's do the closing circle and end it. Suzanne, you want to
go? This chapter was still very hard for me. I mean, I just accept that we have free will, and I don't
Your free will.
all the foundational explanation to it.
Yeah.
Because I was definitely catching myself sort of my eyes glazing over like
yeah, for sure. Daniel?
I in our last hour and a half, I got a better understanding of what I actually read, so it's good.
Awesome. Sorry, Suzanne, I cut you off there.
No, it's okay. I was just going to end with and just remembering that patience is a necessity.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Little steps.
The baby steps, yeah. Baby?
Yeah, thanks. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
It was, it's interesting to read it, say this seems to be important, why, and then being able to, share it really drives deeper meaning for me, and thank you for that opportunity.
Yeah. Yeah. I really enjoy being held accountable with our group and moving forward through this material, because it is really important. Every time I do sit down to read it, I'm like, I am drawn in, but it's my monkey mind and it's the sugar that doesn't allow me to focus sometimes. But I do want to stay committed to it because it is really important to me. I value this work and this understanding so much. So I'm extremely grateful to our friendships that are formed from this group and to the commitment that we all create for each other. So thank you guys. I appreciate you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, till next time.
Till next time.
Hey.
All right. Bye, guys.
Bye-bye.
Bye.